Hey everybody, welcome back. This is another lesson for Percy Jackson the Lightning Thief, and it's a chapter where we have a lot of information dumped on us, and I'm excited to discuss it um, and better understand the story and how the author gives us information about this crazy world that he has invented. Um, Again, this lesson is only going to work if you've read the chapter and or watched the video that reads the chapter with you in order to fully understand it. So make sure that you have done that before you start this video. And if you have, then you can join with us and dive right in. Okay. This is lesson number 15. This is going to be centered on the Lightning Thief, chapter 5. And the objective is going to sound kind of weird, but it'll make sense as we go through it. So we will refer to structural elements of a text to evaluate the effectiveness of the author's choice of text structure. And so what this means is we're just going to take a look at what kind of text it is, which is apparent to everybody at this point, and then the different parts of that kind of text. Like if this were a poem, we would be looking at the rhyming words or at the line breaks. It is not a poem, but if we're going to be looking at the different elements of the text to see if the author chose a good text, a kind of writing, to tell the story or make the point that he is trying to make. And the reason why we're doing this is because good readers are able to evaluate, they're able to judge why they like something, or if they don't like it, what the author was trying to do to get people to like it, so that we can decide what we like to read, what we don't like to read, what kind of information we're getting, if it's good information or bad information. And so being able to look at what the author is doing and say, this is why the book is great, or this is why I don't like the book that much, is a good skill to have as a reader, because then you can decide the kinds of things you want to read and the kinds of things that you don't. Awesome. And so part of the what we're going to be doing is taking a look at the last couple pages of this chapter and talking about how it helped the readers understand the story, the text, and how it made it fun to read. And so we're going to give at least two structural examples of elements, and so we'll just dive what those are in throughout the lesson, make sure that we can recognize them and then evaluate them. First, vocabulary. There's 10 today, so I'll make sure I go pretty quickly. The first word is arena, which is a stage, ring, or other enclosed area where shows or sports events occur. If you've ever seen a basketball or football game on TV, they take place in a stadium, which is another form of arena. Second word is pseudonym, which is a false name adopted by someone to conceal their identity. Spies who are trying to hide who they really are, they use the word pseudonym. Even a nickname can be used as a pseudonym if you go by a name that's not your real name. But usually a pseudonym means, if you go by a nickname, you're not trying to hide who you are. You're just called something different. But if you're trying to conceal who you are, that's what a pseudonym is. The third word is primitive, which means simple or not developed. When we think primitive, a lot of the things we think about are cavemen, people who don't have like homes or electricity and things like that. They are primitive. The number 4 is incinerate, which means to burn completely. That's what it means. If it's burned up in flames, it's incinerated. Number 5, the word is convergence, which means the act of meeting at a common point. You can visualize this by if there's two people walking down the sidewalk, one's coming from one side, one's coming from another, and they meet in the middle. That is a convergence. They have come together. Number 6, the word is obliterate, which means to erase or make unrecognizable by erasing. Obliterate usually means like destroyed, just completely gotten rid of. When when you see the definition says to erase, you might think that when you erase the whiteboard, you are obliterating the whiteboard. Usually, obliterate means to like completely destroy. If a car gets in an accident, you might say that it was obliterated. Number 7 is the word facade, which is the front of a building. Sometimes facades are referred to as fancy because they're nice, but a lot of times it just means the front of a building. Number 8, the word is pavilion, which means a light building with open sides. You might have noticed if you've ever gone to a park where there's a roof over some picnic tables, that's usually considered a pavilion. Number 9, the word is amphitheater, which is an oval or round building with seats rising in rows from an open central area. So the Greek people, thousands of years ago, were the first to create these amphitheaters, which are similar to like movie theaters that we see today, but instead of the movie being projected onto a screen, they would just be usually built on a hill, and the stairs would go up the hill, and on the bottom of the hill there'd be a stage that people would do performances on. So that's an amphitheater. If you've ever been to the Mann Theater in Philadelphia, then that's an example of the amphitheater. And then number 10, the word is fetlocks, which are the projecting bones above and behind the hooves of horses or horse-like animals. If you've ever noticed horses and other animals like cows and things, their knees actually go the opposite direction that we go. Ours bend like this, theirs bend the opposite way. So just where their knee bends, that is their fetlock. Great. For those, everyone should have read the chapter already, so you know that this tells about a camp where people participate in many group activities. And so I just want you to imagine or describe the coolest camp that you've either been to or that you would like to attend. Then that'll get your thinking aligned to what we're doing today, or at least the chapter today. Pause the video. Awesome, that's your back. I think my coolest camp when I was a kid would be way different than what it would be now. Right now, the coolest camp to me would just be board game camp. I really love playing board games, but really never have the time to do it. And so it would be awesome to just go away for a week and have hundreds and hundreds of games out, and we can just decide whichever one we want to play and play them nonstop. As a kid, that doesn't sound like that fun, but I would like to hear what yours are. Cool. So we're going to, today's lesson is kind of a blend of a couple different things. We're going to be taking a look at what kind of text Percy Jackson is, which we've done before, so that should be fairly simple. But then looking at the choices that the author makes, the author's purpose for those choices, and deciding whether or not they work well, or even if we're not deciding, we're explaining why we think they work well, or if they don't work well, explaining why we don't think they work well. So to do that, we're just going to give us a quick reminder of a couple different things. First, not actually worried about the objective too much, but just a reminder of the different kinds of narrative forms that we can encounter. We encounter poetry, fiction, nonfiction, and drama. Those are the four main kinds of narrative forms. All right, and we've decided already that Percy Jackson previously is a fiction text. We know that because it has characters, it takes place in different settings. The characters are experiencing problems, and then they're trying to solve those problems, which are like the main indicators, the main elements that make up a fiction story. Okay? And so we know that the author chose to use this form because they want to tell a story about a person, a world, or an idea that's pretty complicated. And so far we've experienced that there's a lot going on in this world. And this chapter really reveals more about the lore, or the way that this world works. It's kind of like our own world, but different with the blending of Greek mythology and the past. And so we're going to be taking a look at some of these elements, the characters, the setting, the problems, and the solutions, and seeing if the author is using them in a way that makes the story enjoyable. Now, when we're thinking about why an author does something, that's talking about their craft and their purpose. Sorry, why an author does something is the purpose, and how they make a point, that's their craft. And so that's what we're really going to be focusing on today is, are these elements that they're using from fiction text working? Are they doing it in a good way? And so just as a reminder, a reason why an author does something is called the author's purpose. And to remember author's purpose, you can remember the word pi. An author will do something to persuade us to think a certain way, to inform us about something, or to entertain us. P-I-E. Okay. And then to do each of those things, there's lots of things that the author can do. If the author is trying to persuade us, they can give us facts and figures. They can make us try to feel a certain way. They can tell short stories or anecdotes to prove the point. If they're trying to teach us about something, they might try to be teaching us about a topic, or about the characters, or about the setting, or just giving us some background for understanding the story of the world. And this is a big place that we're going to be hanging out today. So we got to keep this fresh in your mind. An author might be doing something to teach us about the characters, or about a setting, or about how the world works. Or also setting up the idea that something will happen in the future of the book too. And again, the author can be just doing something to entertain us by just writing some funny dialogue or some words to build suspense, make us worried about what's going to happen or care about our characters, or just give the mood of feeling a certain way. They can also help us entertain us by making connections between things that we know outside of the book or things that happen inside of the book that connect to what we're just reading now. And then anytime the author is just trying to make us feel, whether it's scared or excited or worried or elated, that's an entertainment strategy that the author is using. And so today, as we go through chapter 5, we'll look at some of the characters and the discussions that they're having, and we'll look at some of the information that we get about the story and about the setting, and see how that makes the story more interesting, how it keeps us entertained, and how it helps us to enjoy. So we'll keep these back here as a reminder, and I'll refer to them a few times throughout the lesson. All right. So again, these thinking questions, they're not directly connected to the exit ticket, but they're going to help us think about what we want to say in the exit ticket. Here we go. It says, why does the author have Percy call his Latin teacher the ex-Mr. Brunner and Chiron Brunner on page 64 of the book and page 69 of the electronic text? And so go ahead and check back on those pages and make a smart guess about why Percy would call his teacher that. Pause the video. Awesome. Now that you're back, let's take a look. Go back to page... go forward page. Right here. So this is the page where it happens. It says, so I said, anxious to change the subject, you work here, Mr. Brunner? Not Mr. Brunner, the ex-Mr. Brunner said. I'm afraid that was a pseudonym. You may call me Chiron. And then he calls him later. Percy said, or Chiron says, I must say, Percy. And then Percy, who's the narrator, says, Chiron Brunner broke in. And so he's not referring to Mr. Brunner as Mr. Brunner, because he's saying X, and also he calls him Chiron Brunner. And thinking about why I would do this in my life when I call someone by a mix of two names is if I knew them as one thing before, and I know that there's something different now, but I'm still not sure what they are. And that makes sense in this chapter. Right? It seems like Percy, we know the name Chiron because we read the text, Chiron, wise as centaur, but it seems like Percy doesn't know that Chiron is the centaur who trained a lot of Greek heroes. So he's not really completely sure of who this person is until the very end of the chapter where Mr. Brunner, Chiron, stands up here and shows that he is a full centaur. Does Percy actually understand who he is? And so I think he calls him ex-Mr. Brunner and Brunner Chiron because Percy is not actually sure who this person is, and it helps us understand that Percy is confused. So the author has Percy call his Latin teacher these things to show that he is confused about who Mr. Brunner is. He doesn't know that, recognize the name Chiron, and so Percy is confused, and the author wants us to know that Percy isn't sure about what is going on at this time. Yeah, so again, just calling the ex-Mr. Brunner, Chiron Brunner, Percy's not sure about who this person is, and so the author lets us know that by having him not sure exactly what to call him. All right. Next question says, explain how the setting in this chapter helps the reader understand and enjoy the story. Use specific details from the text to prove your thinking. So, go ahead and check back into the chapter, look for some details that describe the setting, and then think about what do you understand after reading those details, and how are you enjoying the story more after you've done that. You may want to think about the mood that the author is kind of having us feeling through the setting, or any emotional appeal, or also thinking about over here, are you getting any background or understanding for the story based on the setting? So go ahead and pause the video and try that on your own. Great. Now that you're back, let's look at some of the details from the setting. It's got a couple marked that are actually closer to the beginning of the chapter. So right here, where it says, "We must have been on the north shore of Long Island, because on this side of the house the valley marched all the way up to the water, which glittered about a mile in the distance. Between here and there I simply couldn't process everything I was seeing. The landscape was dotted with buildings that looked like ancient Greek architecture, an open-air pavilion, an amphitheater, a circular arena, except that they all looked brand new. Their white marble columns sparkled in the sun. In a nearby sandpit, a dozen high school-age kids and satyrs played volleyball. Canoes glided across a small lake. Kids in bright orange t-shirts like Grover's were chasing each other around a cluster of cabins nestled in the woods. Some shot targets at an archery range. Others rode horses down a wooded trail, and, unless I was hallucinating, some of their horses had wings." So I know that was a lot of information, and when I quote this, I'm not going to use all of it. But these details right here really describe what Percy is seeing, what he's experiencing when he came here. And it does, I think, in my opinion, does two things. One, it makes it clear that something weird has gone on. This is not what he would expect to find on the North Shore of Long Island, which is only a couple hours from us. He would expect to see regular houses where people live, and maybe brick buildings, or like a basketball court, or maybe an open field. But to see an open-air pavilion, Greek architecture, and marble columns, and a sand pit, like, these aren't things that you would normally expect to see in this area. So it gives you this, since we already had the sense that something weird was going on, it confirms that, man, yeah, something weird is really going on. What is this stuff doing here? But then secondly, if you've ever experienced summer camp, this is a lot of there's a lot of things that you see there. Kids canoeing, bright orange shirts that are running around cabins that are in the woods, riding horses. Like, this is a very stereotypical summer camp experience. And so I think two things are happening here. The author is confirming that something strange is going on, that this ancient Greek stuff shouldn't really be here. But two, that even with all this weird stuff, this seems like a summer camp that a lot of normal kids would go to. And so going back to, I'm going to try to do both things. So the setting helps us understand that something very strange is going on with Percy's life. In the text, it says, and I'm going to use the idea that, I don't want to add any more notes. Go away. I want to highlight. Style buildings that look like ancient architecture. This detail right here is the one that shares about the weird Greek stuff that's there. This shows that a lot of ancient Greek influence is on Long Island, where we wouldn't expect to see that kind of stuff. It also helps us enjoy the setting. I'm not going to say it, sorry. The setting also helps us enjoy the book, because many of the activities that Percy sees kids participating in can remind us of summer camp activities that we and other normal people may have experienced and found fun. Now, I know not everyone has had the chance to attend a summer camp, but many people have probably seen it on TV or in movies, the idea of just getting out into the woods and living in a cabin and canoeing and experiencing nature. And so even if you haven't experienced it yourself, you have this idea of what summer camp is for a lot of kids. And that can be enjoyable. With these authors' craft and purpose ideas, there is a lot of different answers that make sense. So as long as you can explain why the author would have done what he done, you can have a strong answer, even if it's not exactly like mine. All right, last thinking question that I think is really important to the understanding of the book in general, and then to the exit ticket. So, how does the dialogue between Percy, Chiron, and Mr. D on page 63 to 68, or if you're reading the electronic text, 68 to 73, help readers understand the previous chapters of the book? Use specific details from the text to explain your thinking. So, go ahead and head back to those pages. Try to figure out how this dialogue helped you understand what was happening earlier in the book, and then share your thinking here. All right, now that you're back, let's dive into it. So this conversation starts right around here on page 68 for us in the electronic version. Now, a couple things that helps us understand. I think immediately we find that it says, "You came to Yancey just to teach me?" I asked. When Percy finds out that Mr. Brunner has come to the school he was at to teach him, it starts to make a little bit more sense about why Percy felt such a connection to Mr. Brunner. Mr. Brunner was there to help him out. And then later on, it says, Chiron is surprised that Percy does not know anything about himself. And so he says, "Percy, did your mother tell you nothing?" She said, I remember her sad eyes looking out over the sea. "She told me she was afraid to send me here, even though my father had wanted her to. She said that once I was here, I probably couldn't leave. She wanted to keep me close to her." And so we learned that the reason why Percy was so close to his mom is that she was trying to protect him. So earlier on in the book, we find out that Percy's mom thought about sending him to this camp, but she couldn't do it because she was worried that she would never see him again. And then the last thought down here says, "What you may not know is that," and I think this is actually probably the most important point, "what you may not know is that great powers are at work in your life. Gods, the force you call Greek gods, are very much alive." And I think this is actually the most important line here because it shows that all the strange things that Percy has experienced earlier in the book that he didn't understand and we may not have understand, the Minotaur, the Fates, Mrs. Dodds turning into something and attacking him, all of those things are because of this. There's great powers at work in Percy's life from the Greek gods who are currently, apparently, very much alive. And so this conversation makes that clear for us, that Percy, the reason why Percy's life is the way it is because there are influences of forces of Greek gods in his life. And so the dialogue helps us understand the previous chapters in the book because it lets us know that all the ways, let's know that Percy's life is the way it is because his life has been influenced by the Greek gods who are apparently very much alive. And then backing up what I know it's because in the text it says, and then that evidence that I had shown before, stop taking notes, here's the best evidence I think that shows it. So I'm going to copy, paste, and you can do this too if you find it capable. This explains all of the strange happenings earlier in the book, like Mrs. Dodds attacking Percy and the Minotaur chasing him down. Cool. So with each one of these, we thought about a different element of the story and how that element helped us understand it and how it helped us enjoy it. In question number 2, we thought about the setting and how the setting affected the story and what it helped us understand. And then in question 3, we talked about the dialogue and the characters, how they helped us understand the story and how they helped us to enjoy the story. And so when we go to our exit ticket, it asks us to describe how these pages of The Lightning Thief help readers understand the text and make it fun to read, which is what we already did. But we want to make sure that to identify the text type and refer to at least 2 structural elements in the response. So that's meaning that we're mentioning that the setting helps from these pages by, or the characters help, or the dialogue helps, or the problem helps, but whatever element from the story that you think makes the story more enjoyable, make sure that you mention it, and then how it's helping you understand, and how it makes the text more fun to read. Okay? So this is a little bit of a challenge. It's not something that we've done a lot, so do your best. Make sure you're looking back in the text onto these pages, and I'll also put this part up here so you can think about what the author might be doing with each different parts of the text. So go ahead and pause the video, do your best. Great. And now that you're back, I will show you my thinking on it. And there's a bunch of different elements that you can refer to. You could refer to the characters, the settings, the problems, the solutions, and things I haven't listed here, like the dialogue or the mood could also be mentioned. But whatever you do mention, as long as you can back it up, it is good. So the pages are down here. And so here's the big points that I saw. Okay. Right here. And yes, Percy, of course they are now in your United States. Look at your symbol, the eagle of Zeus. Look at the statue of Prometheus in Rockefeller Center, the Greek facades of your government buildings in Washington. I defy you to find any American city where the Olympians are not prominently displayed in multiple places. Like it or not, believe me, plenty of people weren't very fond of Rome either. America is now the heart of the flame. It is the great power of the West, and so Olympus is here, and we are here. The end of this paragraph here, it really helps us understand that, like we mentioned in question number 3, the fact that in this book Greek gods are alive and they care about what mortals are doing, right here, is what makes the story interesting. And so this part here confirms more that not only they're alive, but they've been around forever, and they're going to have a big influence on what happens in this book, because that's what makes this book interesting, that the Greek gods from Greek culture are alive and in America now. And so that's one of the structural elements of how the setting, this time and place, helps us enjoy the story. Okay. And then another part, well, actually, let me write that part out first, and then I'll do the second part, because it wants to include 2 structural elements. Okay. So these pages help us understand that the Lightning Thief is going to be centered around the activities of Greek gods in America today. The setting of ancient Greek ideas in an American society is interesting and makes it entertaining to see how these ancient forces still might impact the world we live in. Right, so that's the first part. It's about the setting, and that helps us understand the book, and how the setting is going to impact how we understand and how we enjoy the book. Now, a little bit later on, the characters help us understand, because it says, who are you? This is Chiron speaking. It says, who are you, he mused? Well, that's the question we all want answered, isn't it? But for now, we should get you into a bunk in cabin 11. And so the characters right here, they aren't sure who Percy is. Percy's not sure who he is. Chiron's not sure who he is. And down here, until the end, I marked this because Percy wasn't sure of who Chiron was until this particular point here. And so the characters make the book enjoyable because no one really knows everything about everybody else. And so it's really entertaining because we get to find out, as the story goes along, more about each of these characters and these mysteries that the author has put in there. And so I'm going to add that on. Additionally, the characters help us enjoy the book because they don't know everything about themselves or each other. They don't know anything about themselves. When we start to, I didn't say they don't know. When we start learning, or not even learning, solving the mysteries of who Percy is and who all of the other people are, the other characters are, it'll be an entertaining experience. All right. Now again, those are strange thoughts that we haven't really combined before, but let's check to make sure we've done it. Do we identify the text as a poem, a story, or play? We did. This is a story. I mentioned that in here. Oh, actually, we didn't. We didn't do that. Is going to be a story. Might even want to say a fiction story. There we go. And that makes sure we have that included. Tells about how different parts make it easy to understand. We did that with the setting, saying how it helps us understand that this is going to be ancient Greek stuff happening in modern time America. How different parts of the text make it more fun to read. We talked about that, how the characters and the mysteries of them not knowing each other or who they are. And then we named the parts of the text. We said the characters and we said the setting. Awesome. There are a bunch of different other elements you could have applied. You could have stated that the problem is going to make the text interesting because Percy doesn't know who he is, and he's going to try to figure out who he is, and so that'll be a cool thing to watch and discover. And so there is a lot of answers that you could have given, as long as you can back them up and explain. First, name what those parts of the text are, either characters, setting, problem, solution, dialogue, other elements, and then how it's going to help you understand or enjoy the book. Those are the parts that you're making sure that you need to include. So I hope that you guys found this entertaining. I thought this chapter was really cool to find out more about the world and how it works. And now that we understand a little bit more, in the following chapters, we'll experience Percy's time at camp and see if it actually works out the way that he wants it to work out. Happy reading.